I'd like to talk about mass non-EU migration into this country and how our political leaders will use any trick and tell any lie in order to accelerate and increase that problem. And to that extent, that they are not cowards, they're not traitors, they're certainly not stupid, they are simply your enemies. By that I mean specifically their interests and their incentives are hostile to your interests, and they will pursue their interests at any cost. But first I'd like to begin with something much more optimistic and life-affirming. You've probably seen it before, but it does you good to see it again.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Wesley Russell. It's very telling that a lot of the conversation tonight seems to be around the hotel. But let's not beat around the bush, okay? Everybody, I think, can agree with me that the biggest concern is everybody's welfare and safety. Now, don't take us for fools when you say that these people are refugees. We know they are illegal migrants. If these people were refugees, what are they fleeing from? It's very telling that we're never told what they are fleeing from. What wars are they fleeing from? What countries are they coming from? What are they fleeing? What persecution? We don't know. So we know that they're by definition illegal immigrants, which technically makes them criminals, and they should be treated as such. They shouldn't be put up in five-star hotels. They should be in cells, and they should be told they are not leaving until they pay for their ticket back. So my question to you is not where are you going to shift them to in a year's time, how are you going to remove them from the country? And don't give me an excuse that, oh, there's the UN refugee document that we signed, or it's the European Court of Human Rights. We voted for Brexit. This is supposed to be a sovereign country. You could easily withdraw from any of those agreements, but you don't. Your party has failed time and time again. In 2010, David Cameron said he was going to get immigration down. How did that work out? We've got higher levels than Tony Blair, and it was his intention to flood this country with migrants on purpose. These people, not all of them, but some of them are going to go on to commit egregious crimes, rape, theft, murder, and there was a reason why the other day there was that ruckus in Kirkby, and we all know why it was, because a migrant was harassing a young girl. That is going to happen in Dunstable, it's going to happen in every single part of the country. You need to stop this now, or you're going to have a serious problem on your hands. Thank you.
We'll move straight to the next question.
Okay, so that was a meeting in Dunstable to discuss the rubber dinghy invaders being put up in hotels, and it was chaired, it was the main speaker was the local MP Andrew Sellis, and here is Andrew Sellis's devious, manipulative non-reply. There's too many stupidities, too much slipperiness in it for me to go through. I'll just play it.
So we're in a church this evening, and 1 in 7 Christians around the world are not safe to practice their faith. Some of the residents in the Old Palace Lodge are from Nigeria. Do you know how many Nigerians lost their lives for being Christians last year? 3,000. 3,000 people killed just for coming to a church. Quite recently, earlier this year, 50 Catholics were blown up in a church just for coming to a service. I'm glad you weren't in charge of this country's asylum policy when the Jews were trying to get here from Nazi Germany. Okay. I think what you have said is offensive, sir.
The thing that I find much more offensive than a member of the public speaking their mind at a public meeting is an upper-class Etonian lecturing people poorer than himself about their moral shortcomings with the aim of making them bear the cost of his own moral proclivities. Now, I don't want to detract from what Wesley Russell said. He did a sterling job. To the extent that I would have said it any different, I think I would have said it worse. But what I want to do is to look at what the response was, and I'm afraid the response was much more muted than it should have been. At the end of his speech, that should have been the cue for the people of that meeting politely to borrow the microphone and to say to Andrew Sellis MP that he should listen and answer their questions. That isn't what happened. Now, I want to play, if I mute this Wesley Russell video, just look at the expressions on the people beside him as I play it. I think I recognise it, as he's talking there, impassive. I think I recognise that kind of expression. And then let me just move it up to when it gets a bit more shouty, and they don't seem to get any more animated there. If anything, they become a little bit more hidden. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not saying they're probably likeable, decent people that they took the trouble to turn out to that meeting. But I think that is the look of people who agree but don't want to be seen to agree. And I think you can see the same in the level of applause that took place whilst he was speaking. Again, I've silenced it again, but just look at the way people are applauding. They're not applauding in a very public way. It isn't very loud, the applause that greets what he's saying, and it's kind of a little bit hidden. People are not wanting to be seen to be applauding too openly, too enthusiastically. And this, I think, is the problem, that we're not awake. We are not willing to confront the problem. We are several layers away from dealing with what we need to deal with. The problem is still going to get worse and worse and worse. But sticking with this meeting, what does get the applause, what does get a lot of sympathy from the audience, is talk about two things. Firstly, the fabric of the building. I think it's the Royal Palace Hotel in Bedford. And the second is dentist waiting list. Those are the two civilisational problems posed by mass immigration. Let me just deal with some of the questions about the building.
The Old Palace Lodge, being a Grade 2 listed building with such historic and profound history in our town, is not the place to house any asylum seekers. In fact, it's an absolute disgrace. What?
Okay, slightly more enthusiastic applause there, and then we can see the reply from Andrew Sellis MP.
With you, I really, really wish the Old Palace Lodge had not been used, because it is such a special building for all of us. I can't help that it has been, I'm afraid, so my objective is to get it back as quickly as possible, and then to help it survive and thrive when it reopens, because if it is a successful business, it'll never ever need to take a government contract again, and that would make us all very happy.
Jumps all over the chance to say that it's not about the migrants, it's just about the building. And he gets quite aroused talking about that building, how it will never ever again have to take a government contract and everyone will be happy. Honestly, that's not even funny. It's pathetic the way people are willing to go along with that. But if you thought that it was sad to go on about a particular hotel building in the face of the rubber dinghy invasion, then just wait, just listen to what people have to say about dentist waiting queues. Up and down the country, that is the civilizational problem that mass migration is posing. Dentist waiting queues, paying for your dentist appointment.
Simple question, where will dental and doctor resources be sourced from? As my daughter cannot get an NHS dentist since moving back to Dunstable 9 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's pretty enthusiastic applause there about dentist waiting lists. And that seems to be the case up and down the country. If you remember, a couple of videos ago I talked about a meeting in Skegness, only this time it was Matt Warman. And he saw his opportunity in lecturing people about international law.
So, as I say, legally, we can't send people. So what we have to do, what we have a legal duty under international law to do, just as Germany does, just as France does, just as all these others. If a person claims asylum in this country, we have that duty to them. Now, it is the case that...
And Matt Warman wasn't held to account over that. Again, the main problem was dentist appointments. Let me just go through a few of them now.
putting our council taxes up, still putting our bills up. I've paid my national insurance all my life, but I can't get into a dentist. I've got asked for a dentist appointment. You know when I got one? November next year.
Exactly the pressure on public services why it is not always fair to put people in communities where there is huge pressure on dentists, as we all know, huge pressure on local GPs, as we all know. And as I say, that's why it's important. It's important. There are two things. One is that the resources come with any additional pressures. The other is that in the medium term, we move people out of hotels and into more appropriate accommodation. And that's why.
So you see what he's saying there. If those rubber dinghy invaders are put up in hotels, then more money's going to come in so we can get more dental appointments. Don't worry about your dentist appointments. And anyway, they'll move out of hotels, at which point there'll be no pressure on dentist appointments after that. And a very similar approach was taken by Andrew Sellis MP.
We're greatly blessed, as the gentleman said over there, by the people from overseas who work in the NHS, and many.
This is what happens when you don't say what you mean. You need to just address the issue up front. We don't want these people here. We want them to go back, and a whole lot more besides. If you don't say that, you give a very manipulative, very devious, very slippery enemy, i.e. the people who rule you, the opportunity to turn it against you. If you're going to flatter them, you'd call it a form of jiu-jitsu, and that is what they're about to do to us in a big way. They are going to use the concerns about the problem they've created, the rubber dinghy invasion, in order to, I think, radically increase the amount of mass migration, and to say it's no longer illegal because we have christened it legal. Now, I could go on with loads of examples of how dentistry is the problem, or the harm to the tourist business in Skegness is the problem. There's example after example, depressing evasiveness from the audience, as well as from Matt Warman MP. But I think I'll just move on to talk about how this is being used against us. Now, the problem as central governments here is that the asylum backlog is too high, i.e. These people are not being welcomed into the country and made citizens fast enough. We're checking them out too thoroughly. And when they say that, it doesn't mean they're going to put more money into employing more people to check them out thoroughly. It just means they will stop checking them out thoroughly, and that's what's proposed. And here's Keir Starmer. Yes, he wants much better asylum processing. It's not the numbers coming in, it's the paperwork. And then Rishi Sunak vows to end asylum claims from small boat arrivals. That could mean anything. That's just a headline grabber. That's a way to distract people. The rubber dinghy invasion and the way the government are treating it, it is, as I said before, it's just a Punch and Judy show to distract us from the real problem. The main problem is that we have, there was about 1.1 million visas granted last year. I think about 704,000 of those were for non-EU nationals. That's 1% a year change every year, plus more coming from EU countries like Poland. And you get a further flavour from looking at this. This article is critical of Robert Jenrick, as who would not be. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick should resign over migrant hotels. Oh goody, maybe there's some hope here. And then what does the MP say? He says that Philip Holborn told MPs that dozens of asylum seekers were moved into a hotel in town on Sunday that had serious environmental health issues. So the rubber dinghy invaders are not comfortable enough. Even the BBC wanted to question why. What did Rishi Sunak mean by his promise to stop the boats? What did that involve? And they don't answer that question. They're not going to. They can't. And Sunak's not saying either. He's just saying, if you come here illegally, you will not be allowed to stay. Sounds tough and macho, means nothing. What it means is, he'll say, well, I'll make it legal for you to come here instead. That is what's coming. And it's coming in two ways. One way is by simply doing simple application form asylum claims where there's no meeting, there's no interview, it's all done remotely on a form. And the other way is by ferrying people over, bringing them over. It's called safe routes because these people need safety. The problem isn't that we have an invasion. The problem is that the invaders might hurt themselves coming in. So we need to stop that, and we will ferry them over. And if you do that, of course, you will stop illegal immigration, because everyone will say, why pay a people smuggler? Why have a cold wet crossing over the channel? When we can just queue up and get ferried over with a free meal and a nice comfy railway ticket. And here is the story from the Beeb. Asylum claims for 12,000 at the moment, typical BBC, to be considered without face-to-face interview. Some 12,000 asylum seekers to the UK are to be considered for refugee status without face-to-face interviews. Now, this will be put forward as a temporary measure. There is nothing so permanent as a temporary government programme. A 10-page Home Office questionnaire will decide the cases of people from Afghanistan, lovely, Eritrea, Libya, Syria and Yemen who applied before last July. The move aims to reduce the asylum backlog, which Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has pledged to end this year. The Home Office says this is not an asylum amnesty, but it will streamline the system for 5 nationalities. There already is an asylum amnesty because applicants from these countries already have 95% of their asylum claims accepted, says the Home Office. So these people will just have to fill in some paperwork remotely. Yeah, tell me, if you were coming in from Iraq, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, tell me you're not going to pose as an Afghan, a Libyan, or a Syrian, and there will be a cottage industry of people filling in that 10-page questionnaire for you. Probably people who used to work for the Home Office, maybe people who currently do work for the Home Office, taking money on the side to fill out those forms. And it will not be, if that starts, it will massively increase from 12,000. That is the whole point. It is intended to increase. And then the government can say, look how we have cut illegal immigration. There is no illegal immigration. It's all legal. And the other way they're going to do it is by ferrying people in. And you can see this from Robert Jenrick. And what he is saying is this. This is the 2 articles I want to look at here about him. New asylum plan will replicate Ukrainian refugee scheme, says Immigration Minister. It would not be an open door to anyone from anywhere, but from countries where the UK has a moral obligation. He doesn't define those. Britain's new asylum plan will replicate the Ukrainian refugee scheme. Well, no, it won't replicate the Ukrainian refugee scheme. He's talking about how people housed Ukrainian refugees, and that scheme is seen as a failure. People house Ukrainian refugees, and most of them found they just didn't like it. After 6 months they stopped doing it. No, we don't want to do it anymore, and they said they wouldn't do it again. I wonder why. And that is with Ukrainians who are considered kind of semi-European. There is no way. Is Robert Jenrick going to take in an Albanian drug dealer into his home? Is he going to take an Afghan into his home? I very much doubt it. Okay, so in an interview with the Telegraph, Robert Jenrick said the proposed new safe and legal routes for asylum seekers, I think we're not safe and legal. The safe and legal, that's a euphemism for bringing them in. Probably they will set up some kind of consulate in Paris or Marseille, southern France, or maybe in Alsace, and they will once people get over the border into France, they can then apply at some British building to be able to get ferried over to the UK to apply for asylum in Britain. That is a safe and legal route. Again, word will go around like wildfire. It won't stop the people smuggling. The people smugglers will simply go to Pakistan and Bangladesh and say, great, we can get you an even better deal now. We can give you more value for money. We can charge you more because you're more likely to go to Britain. Once you set foot there, you don't get kicked out. Okay, and he said that safe and legal routes for asylum seekers would not be an open door to anyone from anywhere, but would be focused on people to whom we have the strongest geographical, historical moral obligation. That's just hand-waving. Which countries? God, I mean, which country does he not think we have a strong geographical, historical and moral obligation, I wonder? And he has no way of saying that other people won't pretend to be from other countries. And how will you know if you're assessing them via a 10-page questionnaire? And then the really revolting part, because I think it must be outright lies, is that the plan will see the number of refugees allowed to enter the UK capped annually by Parliament, with anyone entering illegally via small boats across the Channel detained and removed to their home country or a safe third nation like Rwanda to claim asylum there. Now, Jenrick talks in another Telegraph article where he says he refers to the fact that his wife is from a Jewish family and they were hounded out by the Nazis. Why do MPs keep pulling that one on us? Is it? I think it's to say you are neo-Nazis if you won't take these people in. I can't see any other reason for that. Robert Jenrick, taking in Ukrainian family was one of the most rewarding things I've done. Well, yeah, well, I'll take your word for that. It was family memories of the Holocaust which proved a crucial factor in Robert Jenrick MP's decision to invite Ukrainian refugees into his home in Nottinghamshire. He and his wife Michelle were concerned whether, as a busy family with 3 children, 2 dogs and 2 jobs, they could accommodate a Ukrainian mother and 2 children in his constituency home in Southwell. What tipped it, however, was the knowledge that his wife was the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors and their children great-grandchildren of survivors of death camps. But on reflection, both of us felt that if more people had stood up and stopped and done the same in previous conflicts, then more people like our own ancestors would have been supported. So it was very personal to us. Okay, it is not belittling the Holocaust to say that this is something completely different. It is not saying we shouldn't have taken in the kinder transports in the 1930s. You're not saying that if you say we're not going to take in hundreds of thousands, millions, 500,000 to 1 million every year of fighting age males from the third world. He really lays it on thick. I mean, if you look at this bit, as something of a harbinger, he has a Second World War fire helmet in his office, something you need in the Home Office, he jokes, but in fact it's a memento of his grandmother's time as a firefighter. She even helped to quell the blaze after St Paul's Cathedral was bombed by the Nazis in 1940. Yeah, so if you don't agree with him, you're the kind of person who might have sided with the Nazis. He just can't resist any opportunity to lay it on thick. I'll never forget standing there with Michel, looking out for a family who were complete strangers and who we'd only met over Zoom and WhatsApp messages. So then when the 2 families came together in the arrivals hall, we all welled up because it felt very emotional. We introduced them to Downton Abbey and EastEnders. See, he's a real man of the people, isn't he? EastEnders. They were fantastic cooks and introduced us to lots of healthy Ukrainian options, which put us to shame. A favourite at breakfast was buckwheat and lots of borscht. Now looking back, he says, I found it one of the most rewarding things that I've done. It was incredibly emotional at times and humbling to have a family that was so similar to my own. Maria's the same age as me and her children are very close in age to mine. What I think he's trying to do there is to prep the public for taking third world Afghans and Pakistanis and Eritreans and Libyans and Syrians into their own homes. It's just not going to happen. I don't believe for a moment he's going to take an Afghan migrant or a few Albanian migrants or some Syrians and Iraqis into his home. And incidentally, all this guilt tripping about the Holocaust, we didn't defeat the Holocaust by having every Jewish person in Europe come to Britain. We put an end to the Holocaust by defeating the invader, by resisting invasion. That was the force, that was the moral force that enabled us to win. And we need to defeat the invasion again. So, does he think the scheme could be replicated? The answer is yes, potentially as part of the Prime Minister's plan for safe and legal asylum and refugee routes. Yeah, safe and legal refugee routes. You know what that means. That means taxiing them in, even more than they are at the moment, as the counterfoil to the crackdown on the illegal migrants, which will mean they will have no route to a life in Britain. Well, no one's going to get on a rubber dinghy if they can be given a free airplane ticket over here. This is a ploy to radically increase the number of asylum seekers and refugees who come to this country. First, you tell them you don't have to get into Britain, you just have to make it into France or some other third country, and then you can apply there and you will get taxied in. And then when you get there, you just have to fill out a form. You can pay someone on the side, someone who works at the Home Office, somebody who used to work on the Home Office. They'll tell you what to say, where to say you're from, what not to say, how to word it, what story to make up. And they'll have no evidence to counteract what you're saying. And the reason I think I can be so cynical about it is because there are lies that are already detectable in this plan. If you go to, again, back to this article about Robert Jenrick, there he is, nice Robert Jenrick. Now if I just go to where he talks about the cap, hold on. However, the number of asylum seekers or refugees entitled to enter the UK will be subject to a cap annually agreed by Parliament, carefully considering our finite resources. I think that is a simple and straightforward lie. I don't think there's any way that Parliament can cap the number of refugee claims that it considers. It may be possible that Britain will be able to send hundreds of thousands of these increased numbers of migrants to third countries. There's no sign of that yet. There's no way they can promise a cap. I think it probably is simply they're saying we're not going to accept many refugees. Now there's this story, judging from this story in the Telegraph, Rishi Sunak vows to cap refugee numbers under common sense asylum system. So if I just Rishi Sunak has vowed to introduce a cap on refugee numbers if he becomes Prime Minister, as he promises to inject a healthy dose of common sense into the asylum system. So it's not that he's saying we will only accept so many and any over that number will go to Rwanda. He's simply saying we will have a cap on refugee numbers, and you simply can't do that. You remember this video where he was so emphatic about international law and we can't send them back? I'll play it again.
As I say, legally, we can't send people back. So what we have to do, what we have a legal duty under international law to do, just as Germany does, just as France does, just as always done. If a person claims asylum in this country, we have that duty to them. Now,
he is right to this extent, so long as we remain part of the United Nations Convention or the European Convention on Human Rights, then we have that obligation. The thing is, he's a lawmaker, he's a politician, he can get us out of it. And he should. And to that end, I just want to do a little bit of the text about the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. This is from their own website. Now, second paragraph down, it says, the core principle is non-refoulement. That refoulement means return, so non-return, which asserts that the refugee should not be returned to any country where they face serious threats to their life or freedom. This is now considered to be a rule of customary international law. And the exemptions to that, as set out by the UK government here, are very slight. There's Article 1F, that's basically dealing with crimes or war crimes. And the other reason you can get out of it is under 33.2, and that is if there would be a danger to national security or to the community of the country you're letting them into. But basically, you can't get out of the duty that's from that's expressed in the UN Refugee Convention. You can't get out of that. So that you can't cap the number of refugees. And then if you go to the European Convention on Human Rights, what you have there, I mean, that's the text of the European Convention on Human Rights. If I go to the next page, this is a document that's published by the court in giving guidance. And if I go to barriers to the removal of asylum seekers, basically, well, in the first place, there are Article 2 of the Convention, which guarantees the right to life, and Article 3, which prohibits torture, inhuman and degrading treatment or punishment. No one can be returned to a place where he or she runs a real risk of being subjected to treatment contrary to either of these provisions. And there is, and well, the next paragraph says, under the Convention, the prohibition provided by Article 3 and also I think by Article 2 is absolute. What that means is you can't get out of it. There is no excuse to get out of it. So if Article 15, that deals with exemptions and for reasons of in time of war or other public emergency threatening the life of the nation or any high contracting party. So even if there is a national security threat from that person, you cannot get out. You cannot return the person to the country that they came from. And there is no derogation, but that exception doesn't apply. There is no derogation from Article 2 or from Articles 3 or 4. The bottom line is, if someone shows up on your shore and they claim asylum, you can't send them back. And you can't cap the numbers. You can't say, well, we've reached our quota, we're not going to take any more, we don't care. You have to provide a mechanism for hearing their claims. You have to evaluate the evidence, and if they qualify, you have to let them stay. You can't impose a cap as Rishi Sunak is saying he will impose. Here, Rishi Sunak vows to cap refugee numbers. No, he can't do that. That is a lie. And if they're telling such a blatant lie about that, then what else are they lying about? They know, the politicians know that this is not wanted, that everyone wants really substantial reductions in the amount of not just of rubber dinghy invaders, but of immigration in general. They are determined to increase it because they know that grinds you and me and all of us down. It makes us more dependent, it makes us weaker, it ruins the circumstances of our lives, and that gives them more power over us, which is what people with power want to do, and that is what they are doing. They want to increase their numbers. They know that we are against it. They also know that they're not going to. Well, actually, no. Let me show you that first of all. If I go to this story here, hold on. Now, that is from. That's from a website called Unheard. New data reveals nationwide desire for lower immigration. Basically, right across the whole country, opinion is higher, significantly higher in favour of a reduction in immigration than saying that there isn't too much immigration. Now, if you look at that map, green on that map, green means that there is too much. People think there is too much immigration. If you zoom in, let's just see if I can zoom in. No, I can't zoom in there. Let's see if I can open up the image. There. If I open up that image, if you just see there, just go down a bit, one tiny little bit of that's Bristol West. Everywhere else in the country is green. Everywhere, basically right throughout the country, everyone wants to see lower levels of immigration. The government know that. They've known that for at least 2 decades because all the opinion polls have said that. The government want to increase it. That is your politicians being your enemy. The politicians also know that these the levels of immigration are a blight on this country, particularly the levels of supposed refugees, basically migrants coming into this country. That they know that people are not going to take in Afghans and Albanians and Syrians and Iraqis and Eritreans the way they took in Ukrainians. They wouldn't take in Ukrainians again. They know that system has failed. They know that is just a fig leaf. The idea that they're going to reproduce that Ukrainian accommodation scheme for third world migrants is it's a fig leaf to cover what they're doing, to make it seem like they can find ways to accommodate people. They can't, they don't want to. They want those migrants to be housed and stored in the way that is most disruptive and degrading to local communities. And I'll tell you why they know. If you do, all you have to do is say interview people who are in favour of having more migration into the country, and ask them would they take in a migrant. Here is a really good video from someone on Twitter, where he went round a demo that was in favour, a refugees welcome demo. So let me play this.
I just noticed your placard said refugees welcome here. Yes. I was just wondering if you'd like to go down on a list saying you're willing to take the refugees into your home.
Of course not. Only problem is I rent.
You rent?
Yeah.
Maybe an issue?
Yeah, because they've got, well, they put 9 bedrooms in a 4-bedroom house, so we're pretty much...
So, to actually adopt a refugee and take them into your home?
Well, if I had any space, I
if
would.
You had any space.
It wouldn't be a nice place to bring them, because it's a bit overcrowded. Right. But yes, if I had the space, definitely.
Thank you very much for that, love. Pop one into your home.
Yeah, I live in a rental place, so okay.
Rental?
Yeah.
You can't do it?
Yeah.
Someone else's job?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
You can't take one?
I don't have a space.
Don't have the space? You have a refugee stay at your house?
Yeah, I don't mind.
You go on the list?
I don't mind, yeah, I can take, give me the thing. Oh wait, I can't, because my house is only a little small and...
Amazing. Would you be willing to have a refugee in your home? Yes, if I had room. If you had room, it's funny that. To adopt a refugee?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
So what does this all amount to? Firstly, the overwhelmingly, I think pretty much unanimously, people think there is far too much immigration into this country. Not just illegal immigration or migrants claiming refugee status or the rubber dinghy invaders, but immigration in general. And people really, you can say with almost total unanimity across the country want lower levels of immigration. That's one thing you can say, a massive, huge majority right across the country in favour of that. The politicians want to see more migration into this country. Non-EU migration into this country last year was 704,000. That was up to, I think, June of 2022, and so it's up to June of 2021, I think it was about 369,000. So it pretty much doubled in a year. I would expect it to increase by at least 50% this year. It'll soon be up to 1 million non-EU immigrants, visas granted to people to come into this country. The politicians want to keep increasing that. So there is that basic tension. We, the public, don't want it. The politicians want it. And that public hostility to it has been steady for the last 2 decades. The politicians want it because it makes us more manageable, more docile. It makes us easier to rule. And I think that is working. If you look at the meeting at which Wesley Russell spoke, what you saw was people actually being, and also the Skegness meeting with Matt Warman MP, what you see is people going along with it, not really wanting to create too many waves. They're not talking about the main issue, they're talking about side issues, and lo and behold, when you talk about side issues, your enemy will then turn those side issues around against you, and those are being used as an excuse to increase the levels of immigration. So we need more migrants so that we can have more dentists. That's the idea. And that is happening in a big way. That's the slippery manipulativeness of politicians writ small. You can see it writ large in the plans nationally, and those plans are to get rid of interviews for asylum claimants and simply to have a 10-page form that's filled out remotely. That will dramatically increase false claims with no way to check them properly. It will mean that there'll be many more people seeing us as a much softer touch. People smugglers will be able to say to people, once you get into Britain, you just fill out this form. You can hire someone who used to work at the Home Office to fill it out for you. And so it will radically increase the numbers wanting to come here, which is what the politicians want. And then on top of that, What is being said is we will start to create safe routes for migrants to come to Britain. We will ferry them ourselves into Britain, and that is the way. And lo and behold, of course, we will cut down on the rubber dinghies. Of course, it's not a war against illegal immigration. It's not about cutting immigration. It's about reducing the reliance on rubber dinghies. That's what they would say. So, and that again, that will increase the numbers of people saying, well, I've got nothing to lose. I get ferried to Britain, even if I get kicked out again after a decade. I've had a decade of good life, earning money on the black market, taking the welfare, and I can go home with enough money to retire on, even in the worst case scenario. That is what is coming. It is being packaged, it is being camouflaged with lies about capping the overall number of refugees, which there is no way to do under the UN Refugee Convention or under the European Convention on Human Rights. And the bottom line is we are taking it. We are nowhere near where we should be. What is being said is the rubber dinghy invasion is a problem because it affects my dentist appointment. No, we need to go one level back from that, and that is to say the rubber dinghy invasion is a problem. But then we need to go one level back from that to say that illegal migration to the UK is a problem, and no, that is not right. We need to go another level back from that and to say that immigration in general to the UK is a problem. 1.1 million visas last year granted for people to live in the UK, 704,000 of those to non-EU migrants, or officially to non-EU migrants. The number is probably worse than that. Even that, stopping that, cutting that down to zero, that is not enough. We need to go further back and say, no, we want to repatriate some of the people, non-English people who are already here. We need to go a level back from that and to say, no, we need a very widespread, pervasive programme of mass repatriation. And we need to go one level further back from that and to say, we're going to think through a way to accomplish mass repatriation in a humane and orderly manner. And so that's, I reckon, we are about 6 or 7 levels away from saying what we need to say. Simply turning up at a meeting, listening politely to your enemy MP and talking about your dentist appointment, that just hands it on a plate to them to do what they want to do, which is to massively increase the level of non-EU third world migration into this country, and that is what they are going to do. The plans are already in place, so wait and watch it happen. I think people will... I have said I can stop the rubber dinghy invasion by stopping the hotels. If you stop the hotels getting used, that problem could have been put a stop to then. They would have had to find, the authorities would have to have found another way to stop that problem. I think that ship has probably sailed, but even then, had people taken me up on that offer, that would not have been enough. All that would have been is an introduction to the right mentality, which is that we need, in fact, not only to stop all immigration, but to have a programme of repatriation. We are nowhere near that yet. The politicians know it. The politicians that know that they can get away with more and faster. That's what I think they're going to do. So wait and watch for that.